What's up, guys? Kevin Allen here, aka The Geek from DFS Army and the Sharp app. And we're talking UFC Fight Night, Caceres versus Amir Albazi. I'm going to give you some quick picks, some DraftKings DFS plays, and hopefully some bets. We're going to go through this card top to bottom and see what we can figure out here. Again, both for DraftKings and for betting purposes. So let's jump right into it. The main event on this card is Caceres taking on Amir Albazi. These are 125-pounders. Smaller fighters, where Caceres is a bit more of just a striker, where Amir Albazi is a little more well-rounded. I don't really consider Albazi like an intense grappler, but he definitely wants to mix in the grappling when he can. Now, when you take a look at these guys' records, this is what's so interesting. Caceres has fought a much better opposition group, right? Much better names, including a win against Askarov, although, you know, he was kind of towards the end of his, I haven't seen him in the UFC. Like, yeah, that was the Askarov out of the UFC fight. So not super impressive. Effectively, what's happened with Caceres is he's beaten scrubs for the most part, but in close fights, but then lost to the better fighters. So, you know, obviously he beat Mark De La Rosa, who loses to everybody. Nothing great there. Brandon Moreno, he takes the L. Tyson Nam, super close fight. Again, his wins have looked like, outside of the most recent win, for the most part, his wins have looked a little sketchy. Again, Tyson Nam, that was a decision, takes an L to Brandon Royval, fine. Rogerio Bondarin, he dispatches with him, and that was his most impressive win, in my opinion. But, you know, again, Bondarin, not exactly winning in the UFC and in the UFC anymore. So what are you going to do with that? Again, Cody Garbrandt was all emaciated when he went down to 125. I'm just not impressed by that one. So effectively, Caceres has been beating sort of people that he should, low-level guys, or, you know, a depleted Cody Garbrandt, and has lost two good fighters. On the flip side, Albazi hasn't really fought anybody. He's fought absolute turds, but he is dispatched of them very easily and quickly. So it's sort of been a tale of who do you go with? The guy who looks really good, but has never fought anybody, or the guy who's kind of fought people, but lost to them, but looked, you know, incredible doing it. So that's what this matchup is. There's a reason these guys are both even odds. Amir Albazi at this point is -115. And actually, the Albazi side is the side that I lean to. I'm just not that impressed by Caceres. I'm sorry. I'm just not that impressed by him. He doesn't do anything really that special. He's got really good takedown defense, and I don't think Albazi will be able to land a bunch of takedowns early and dominate with his grappling. I think Caceres will avoid that, but I also think Albazi might be just as good of a striker, maybe a little more power. And later in the fight, I do think that wrestling will come into play as the fighters start to get tired. It's really hard to, you know, maintain that elite takedown defense through 5 rounds. So give me Amir Albazi. Is it a bet? If I'm betting it, I might let's take a look at some of the props here. I don't love a bet on Albazi. I have not pulled that trigger. I could see the fight goes the distance prop at +125 being a more interesting play here. Now, as far as, and I was just looking for the Albazi by decision +350. I don't mind that either. Like, if you're going to play Albazi, maybe play it by decision, take the +350. Let's make some money if we're right on that one. So, you know what? I'm going to go with Albazi by decision for this one to win 1 unit. So that's only going to cost us like 1/3 of a unit to do by unit. All right, there we go. Albazi by. So if we're going to fight if we're going to bet everyone, that's it. As far as DFS purposes, a 5-round fight, and salaries don't really matter too much. So this is not an all-in fight for me. Neither guy does anything that scores all well. I don't think that we're going to see any grappling out of Caceres. You know, and he's not even a high-volume guy. So even in a decision win for Caceres, he might land 120 strikes. You know, that what does that get you? 90 points in a decision win. So it's not a must-have main event on DraftKings for me. Moving on. Next fight, we've got Alex Caceres taking on Daniel Pineda. And this is an interesting one because let me jump to the odds first here. But Caceres is a -190 favorite, which I think is kind of crazy for Caceres. I think one of the other interesting components here is that the fight ends inside the distance prop is a surprisingly high -180. Now, obviously, I think the reason for that is Daniel Pineda is just not known as a guy that can make it to a decision. He goes all out to ball out early in fights. He usually either gets a finish or gets himself finished. So that's been his fighting style for a long time. Let's take a look at Daniel Pineda's record, and you'll see that finish, finished, finish, 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 finished. And here we got a decision lost back in 2016. So, you know, his last goes to decision fight, 2016. So that's really driving a lot of this. But the problem for me with that is Alex Caceres is really not a finisher. He's got 9 wins by decision, 7 by submission, only 4 by KO. So effectively, Caceres is a striker. He's a karate-style, low-volume striker, and he just doesn't finish people generally. Now, you might say, well, he knocked out Julian Erosa in his last fight, and that's true. But Julian Erosa has no chin. I mean, this guy gets knocked out all the time. He got knocked out by Padilla in the next fight. Like, he just has a bad chin, and that's just who Erosa is. But it's just because Caceres knocked out Erosa doesn't mean he's going to knock anybody else out. He hadn't finished anybody by strikes before that. I mean, I can't even remember when. So you can go back years and years and years since that has happened. And I just don't think Caceres is very good at all. I kind of think Pineda is going to win this one. So I've got, in terms of the betting line, for DraftKings purposes, I think you could pretty much full fade Alex Caceres, as crazy as that sounds, in a fight where there's a decent inside the distance prop. I just don't see it. Caceres, let's see, Caceres inside the distance +170. I don't love it. Pineda inside the distance +200. That kind of interests me, but I don't need it. For Pineda, I'm just going to take +160 for Pineda to win the fight. And so the bet here is Pineda. Again, this is not a high confidence play at all. So we're going to keep that one light. +160. It's going to be a to win 1 unit play on Daniel Pineda +160. As far as DraftKings, I think Caceres is fadeable for DFS purposes, and Pineda is very much in play. Absolutely. And salaries don't matter on this slate. So I actually really like Pineda because you can get an edge with that fighter by playing the cheap guys. Like the way this slate works out, we'll get to the free squares coming up in a minute, but and we'll make a DraftKings lineup. We'll kind of go through it. But with those free squares, I think the way to get unique on this slate is actually to play more of the underdogs and just leave tons and tons and tons of salary on the table. So that's my plan. All right. Next up, we've got Jim Miller versus Jesse Butler. Late replacement Jesse Butler. Jim Miller was actually the underdog, a heavy underdog in this fight originally. And now that they changed his opponent to Jesse Butler, he's now a pretty solid, but not crazy solid favorite. And I want to show you Jesse Butler a little bit. So let me start here. Jim Miller -250 favorite. There aren't too many markets here, but under 2.5 rounds -170. So the fight is expected to end inside the distance. Great. That's all we have on the lines right now. Now, as far as Jesse Butler, it's important to understand, again, where he comes from. This kid has beaten nobody to get here. They needed somebody. He stepped up. His last win was against Luis Luna, who is effectively somebody who just loses a lot and has no notable win. There's nothing in his win history. I mean, Ray Trujillo, come on. So this is a guy, I mean, this is a professional guy who comes in to take losses, right? So this is ugly stuff. He really has no pedigree to be fighting Jim Miller, who is one of the great all-time, an aging, but great all-time UFC fighters. I don't see this as a spot to make a name for yourself off of Jim Miller. I just think they needed a body and they found one. And, you know, sure, he's live because he's 31 and Jim Miller is 39. But really, in fight years, Jim Miller is now breaking records for the most UFC fights. I mean, he might as well be 50 in fight years, or 55. That's how many fights he's had. But, I mean, it also wasn't that long ago. In 2022 and 2021, he's winning fights. Multiple fights last year that he's won, and he actually put up a respectable fight against Alexander Hernandez. So I say Jim Miller still got it. I think this is an easy win for Jim Miller, probably by submission, but I'm not going to necessarily specify that. But I am using Jim Miller as a leg in my safety parlay. Jim Miller in there. Minus 250. For DraftKings, if you take a look, Jim Miller really is the he's one of the reasons why the slate is really, really interesting, because Jim Miller is so cheap. When you add him to your lineup, because he's a late replacement guy, and you add him to your lineup at 6,800 or 7,100, you know, you can afford whatever you want. And well, there's another free square coming up on this DraftKings slate as well. And when you use them both, salaries are completely irrelevant. You'll see in a second how that goes. All right, next up, we've got Tim Elliott against Victor Altamirano. And I don't know, this is a close fight. There's some personal stuff going on with Tim Elliott, divorce, all that craziness. And I don't know what happens with that. If that makes you fight a little more angry, aggressive, better, or worse, hard to say. But I think he's probably going to come out angry. So Tim Elliott, the veteran, taking on Victor Altamirano. When we take a look at the stats for these guys, everything leads to really lots and lots of fantasy production. Tim Elliott is averaging almost 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. But Altamirano is also averaging a solid 2.5 takedowns and some crazy volume. Of course, all of that came in his one fight, but nonetheless, or actually, I'm sorry, he's developed that over a multi-fight resume. So these numbers are fairly reliable. Tons and tons of striking volume, lots and lots of grappling. I love both sides of this. Is basically an all-in fight. This is close to an all-in fight for DraftKings. For DFS purposes, most lineups should have one or the other. Normally, I would probably favor Tim Elliott. He's maybe a little bit better everywhere, but the mental stuff right now can go either way. We saw last week or 2 weeks ago with Mackenzie Dern, divorce, angry, and she took it out on her opponent and put on a show. It was the best version of Mackenzie Dern that we've ever seen. I don't know that happens with Tim Elliott here. His story is really messed up. Go look it up if you want. I'm not sure what Tim Elliott we're going to get, and Tim Elliott's not really that good anyway. So for me, it's if I'm picking a winner, it's the dog here, Victor Altamirano, for betting purposes. I cannot lay minus 185 on Tim Elliott. No shape, no way, no how. Is there a prop here that jumps out at me? Over 1.5 minus 525. Don't like that. Yeah, no, I don't like the fight goes the distance, or I mean, maybe the end's inside the distance, but no, I'm not loving it. Yeah, I think this is an avoid on the sports book. I'm just, I would have to take Altamirano, but I'm not doing it. So there you have it. I do love both sides for DraftKings purposes, though. So make sure to load up on either guy in DraftKings. And again, with Altamirano, the same as with Jim Miller or Daniel Pineda, where if you're using lots and lots of the underdogs on this card, that's a good way to get unique, considering that we have the free squares with Jim Miller, and coming up soon, another free square with Jamie Malarkey. All right, let's shut this window down here. Go to the next one. Carini Silva versus Caitlyn Souza. Really interesting. Some late line movement, a little bit of line movement here on Silva against Silva, which has brought it a little bit closer. So Silva at this point is minus 190. Caitlyn Souza plus 165. interesting note on Carini. And let's take a look at actually the inside the distance prop on this one before we take a look at that. But fight ends inside the distance, -150. So solid, but not spectacular. So here's what's interesting about this fight. Number one, on DraftKings, Silva is one of the more expensive over 9K fighters. Do we really need a fighter that doesn't necessarily do a lot of the kind of things that score well on DraftKings? Now, she has gotten finishes, so that's great. She finishes fights. But the volume is not great. She's not one of those fighters, even if she gets a takedown, and she hasn't done that much in the UFC, but if she gets a takedown, she's not doing the little love tap thing that just scores points really well on DraftKings. So she's got some issues for me in terms of her ability to score quickly. Caitlyn Souza, coming out of Invicta, she's an Invicta champ, but really, again, not much to like there from the tape that I've seen. What's this? What's this? What is it? It's torturing me. Is it a bikini? I don't know. Anyway, no notable wins here. There's no name that you recognize. There's nothing special here. Decision. I mean, 0-0, 1-0, 8-6. You know, nothing special here at all. But she is the Invicta champ for whatever that's worth. Here, she's got when she faced Ariane Carnelossi, she took an L. And you know, listen, Carnelossi, you know, low level UFC, but UFC viable, but low level. And that's who beat Silva. Now, Silva could be improving. She looks a little bit better now. She's young, 27 years old. So let's see. The Carnelossi fight was 2019. So it's, you got to kind of throw that one away. She was maybe 24 or 23. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, especially with women's MMA. They tend to improve massively year to year. With all that being said, this is a no bet situation for me. I am just not liking anything to do with this fight. I'm leaning Carini Silva, but she really hasn't shown anything. She hasn't been out of the first round in a while, or the second round, round one, round two, round one. So, you know, she's finished or get finished more often than not. And, you know, she's done what you have to do, though. And I appreciate that. You're finishing your opponents. You're doing everything you have to do. She got a credible win against Poliana Botello. Although, again, Botello, not that good. But it is a credible win, I guess. But, again, Poliana Botello, not that good. So, not really. So, neither of these girls are particularly proven. I'll go with the favorite here, but I am not betting this one. As far as DraftKings goes with that particular fight, I think everybody's going to be tempted to pay up for Silva because you have the salary. It's there. But I would caution, I will play her, but I would also caution that she's not any more likely to put up 100+ fantasy points than just about any other fighter on this card. So I don't want to load up on and get crazy with my exposure. I want to play her as a likely winner, but not as a likely score 110 points in a win fighter. All right, guys. Next up, we got Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos taking on Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov. And, you know, this one's an interesting fight. They're all interesting fights, right? They're all interesting in their own way. Where is this? So, number one, Dos Santos plus 103 as the underdog. Abu Bakr is minus 123 as the favorite. The inside the distance prop on this fight the fight ends inside the distance plus 145. So it's minus 175 to go the distance, which is always interesting. Let's take a look at the stats here for these two fighters, get a feel for it. But I think it's important to note that Dos Santos hasn't fought in a while. And where is he? You know, he was popped for the roids a little while back. So, you know, it's not the best situation. Now he hasn't fought since 2021. It's been a couple of years. Looks like he had a canceled fight in 2022. So at least he's been training. But, you know, there was a steroid bust. There was a popped for the roids situation. And I don't like that because when you're 36, you come back from a steroid pop. That's just a bad scene. It's a bad scene. Nurmagomedov is one of these guys. I mean, the last name says it all. He's a wrestler, a grappler. He's got takedowns. He doesn't use them as much as I would like a fighter to use them. So, or he hasn't so far in the UFC. If you take a look at Abu Bakr, he's just not, you know, one takedown. He hasn't had more than one takedown in a fight. I don't know why he's doing that. Why are you doing that? Because the way to beat Zaleski dos Santos is using takedowns. He's not that good at defending takedowns. Dos Santos only 62% takedown defense. So that is the way to defeat Dos Santos. You get him off his legs. You get him off away from his power. That's how you win. I think he will smarten up and use the grappling. I think. But shit, he's never done it more than once in a fight in the UFC so far. So I don't know. But for my money, give me Abu Bakr to win this fight. Minus 123. That line is flipped. I think he was the underdog just the other day. Yeah, so now we've got the flip. When a fighter flips to a favorite, and it looks like it's growing, I think people are realizing that Zaleski's coming off that steroid bust, and that's just not a good scene. So I think that's what's going on here. Post weigh-in, I see the line continuing to move. If this was a stock, I'd sell short on that stock going down. But if this is a fighter and going down is good, I will go long here on Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov. Let's put that one in. This is minus 123. Risk 1 unit. DraftKings purposes, I also like the Abu Bakr side a little bit. He's got a grappling upside, but this is not a must-have fight for me on DraftKings. All right, Daniel Santos taking on Johnny Munoz Jr. Santos, a minus 230 favorite. Comeback on Munoz is plus 195. Fight ends inside the distance, a strong minus 215. So this is a fight we definitely want to target on DraftKings. Let's take a look real quick at the stats for both fighters here. And this is something I like to see. So neither guy is that great at stopping takedowns. 57% for Santos, 66% for Munoz. Both of them like to go for takedowns. So, you know, what this tells me is we should get a lot of action. Lots of takedowns along the way. Back and forth grappling affair. Lots and lots of potential scoring. Santos is definitely the higher volume guy. And I think that's the difference maker. If you look at Johnny Munoz's fights, man, where's the volume? You know, here we go. 78 significant strikes. You know, I guess he's been getting finished, so it's really hard to go by this. But this is the one that really kind of bothered me a little bit. Against Nate Maness, for only 49 significant strikes landed. And again, these opponents are really low level, like Ludovic Shalinian, rough. Jamie Simmons, rough. And when he's faced a decent to acceptable opponent, he's lost. So I don't know. I don't know if Johnny Munoz has got it. Whatever it is, I'm not sure he has it. Give me Daniel Santos here to get this win. I think it's really interesting that this fight was scheduled a couple weeks ago, and the line was much tighter at that time, and now it's widened up. I think at that point it was minus 160 for Santos. Now it's minus 230. That just gives me a little bit of pause in terms of wanting to bet it at minus 230. But, maybe we can mix that one in with our Jim Miller parlay situation. Yeah, we'll add Santos to the Miller parlay. So that's leg 2 of our Miller parlay. Now, I know you want dog money. I've been giving you dog money, but I got some more dog money coming in here. And here we go. Andre Arlovsky taking on Dontel Mays. And I've got, Arlovsky's a plus 123 underdog, which is crazy. It's crazy to me that Dontel Mays is a favorite against anybody, but yet here we are. This is our life now. Dontel Mays minus 142 in this fight. For DraftKings purposes, this is a full fade. We don't need exposure to this fight. Andre Arlovsky is a snooze fest. As far as as far as the Dontel May side, he could flash knock out the 44-year-old Arlovsky. So you have to maybe account for that. But beyond that, he's not doing a damn thing here. Dontel Mays is just not very good at all. I have not been impressed with. I have not liked what I've seen out of him. He took a beating to Augusto Sakai. We cashed a bet on Sakai in that fight. I could not understand what people were talking about there. His wins, I mean, this was a close fight against Roque Martinez. And I mean, Roque, no, hell no. This guy's not fighting in the UFC. He's fighting in Ryzen and Brawl International. I mean, come on. And so his wins have come against crap. Josh Parisian, how is he still fighting in the UFC? How? This guy's terrible. So, his wins have come against the worst of the worst. Andrei Arlovsky is a gatekeeper, even at age 44. He still has the boxing skills. He still has the distance, the movement. He just doesn't have any power. So I don't see Arlovsky winning this one by knockout. But the Arlovsky, let's take a look at the Arlovsky by decision prop here. And it's probably not going to be that good. Arlovsky by decision plus 155. So the juice on the decision isn't good enough to really just get me off of the money line on Arlovsky. Arlovsky plus 125, risk to win 1 unit. Boom. All right, we're moving on. We're rocking. We're rolling. Next up, we've got John Castaneda taking on Muin Gaffarov. Castaneda is a minus 133 favorite with the comeback on Muin Gaffarov at plus 113. Now, here's what's interesting. Now, let's take a look at some of the props here. I'm going to tell you an interesting factoid in a second. So the fight goes the distance / ends inside the distance, pretty much even odds. And here's the deal. I don't even care about that for this fight because Muin Gaffarov is a relentless grappler. He is, a Dagestani style fighter. And what's interesting and what I wanted to go with that was this kid was minus 400 in his UFC Contender Series fight that he took on, what was his name? Chad Endlinger. Now, that was a close fight, and he took the L. Very close fight. He took the L. But that's how highly regarded he was. He lost a close decision against John Lineker. I mean, that's a real opponent not that long ago. So he takes the L. Again, split decision. If his career had gone differently, if he doesn't take that L, who knows? But, and then he goes back to LFA where he proceeds to dispatch of what was a couple of quality opponents, especially Souza, 15-1 opponent here. Just a solid fighter. So, dispatches of these guys. I'm chalking up the Contender Series split to maybe a little bit of nerves, maybe a little bit of not your day. There's also some story where he had to fly insane distances to get to that Contender Series fight. And there was just some extenuating circumstances that led to it. I think Gaffarov is one of the best bets I've seen in a long time. He's got intense grappling. And let me see if I can see what info we could pull up here on the stats sheet. But 5 takedowns per 15 against the guy in Castaneda that is 60% takedown defense. This is just screaming to me. Now, the problem with Gaffarov is he doesn't throw a ton of volume, but he does throw with power. So this is a screaming buy for me, and I'm betting 2.5 units on Gaffarov at plus 115. 2.5 units. We're gonna bank our entire night on this fight. So the goal for my UFC is if I hit my favorite play, it should cover all of the other ones at 2.5 units at plus 115. We'll be up about 3 units if we win, and everything else that we've done so far will not total up to 3 total units. So that is the did we make money today fight, and then after that is the what's our profit going to look like fight. So let's go Gaffarov, that top play on this card. I love it. All right, next up, we've got Jamie Malarkey taking on Muhammadjan Naimov, and I'm not going to talk too much about this one. Malarkey is a minus 400 favorite. I don't think I want to lay minus 400 on this fight. On DraftKings, though, it's really, really important to understand Malarkey is the other piece of the free square. And take a look at what happens when you play Malarkey and Jim Miller together. And I'm really going to talk about this more than anything else because this is really important. So number one, the minute I pair up these two super cheap guys, my average remaining salary is $9K, and you could pretty much play whoever you want. This is kind of what I could just go through the most expensive. You could do whatever you want to do here. There's no limitation here. Let's go to the top of the salary range. If I just you can pretty much go most expensive. You could play whoever you want, right? So I could play, I don't want to play Gordon. He's not fighting, but I could play Carini. I could play, and Lucero, and it's no problem making these lineups with all these. Actually, I kind of like this lineup, but this is not a good lineup to put in a Millie Maker style contest because it'll be replicated 1,000 times. So keep that in mind. The combination of Malarkey and Miller will exist in a massive number of lineups. Probably too many to really. It's a tough spot. So the way to differentiate is you got to be unique. Either not play one of these guys, and either one of them can potentially not score 100 on a slate like this. So they do not need to be in every single lineup is where I'm going with it. Either guy can score 100 plus, but either guy can also score an 85. And because of how salaries worked out on this card, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to play them. Like I put together lineups where, because I also like a lot of these underdogs, and that's what makes it so interesting. You got Gaffarov, you got the main event, you have your main event fighter, right? So you could pick one of these guys if you want. Now, we had a couple other. Where were we? Yeah, Pineda, I like. So I mean, look how much is left. And then if I didn't go crazy on the last spot, if I want to take a Zaleski or an Nurmagomedov or something like that, I mean, you're leaving so much on the table. I think that allows you to be a little bit unique here. Anyway, all right, moving on. 3 fights left. Jinyu Frey versus Elise Reed. This is a gross fight. I don't even want to break it down. Plus money on Jinyu Frey, plus 107. This is likely to go to decision. Neither girl has great volume. I'm favoring Jinyu Frey here. I'm not going to bet it, but if you're betting, I'm taking the plus money all day. I'm not laying any kind of negative money on a fight like this. Elise Reed's a little bit younger, but I think she sucks. Jinyu Frey if Jinyu Frey just uses her grappling, she has takedowns. She can take a fighter down. She's done it before. She doesn't do it all the time. Here, I'll show you, but she's done it before. She doesn't do it all the time, but she certainly has done it. There was a fight not long ago for Jinyu Frey where, yeah, she got 2 takedowns against Gloria DePaula. Her win, when she won, she used the takedowns. So I think that's what she has to do here against Elise Reed. Elise Reed has horrific takedown defense. It's actually disturbing. 47%. That is horrible. And that's the path to the win for Jinyu Frey. Will she do it? I don't know. But if you were forcing me to choose, I would choose that. Or actually, there is one thing I do like about this fight, which is fight goes to decision, minus 220. I think that is a very, very fair number. And I will add that into our silly parlay here with Miller, Santos, and then Frey goes to decision. Wow, my scratch handwriting is so bad. I don't even think I'm going to be able to read that when I'm putting in the bets. I'm like, what did I say? All right. Next up. X that out. Luan Lucero. And of course, Frey, Reed, avoid. That is full fade worthy on DraftKings. Full fade worthy. Luan Lucero taking on Damon Blackshear. Lucero minus 148. That is a line steam movement situation. Started at plus 113. It's now at minus 148. Damon Blackshear plus 128 at this point. I got to show you. Damon Blackshear has not been impressive for me at all in the UFC in his run so far. He's just taking L's to guys who aren't that good. Or not going to say not that good. Farid Basharat is good. The draw with Yusuf Zalal, not a good look at all, though. And just nothing notable in his history to say this guy is any kind of decent fighter. His stats, not very good, particularly against the takedown. So he's going to be in some trouble against Luan Lacerda, who does go for takedowns. And again, Damon Blackshear's takedown defense, 42%. Again, a lot of that came against Basharat. But here's the thing. Yusuf Zalal took him down. Yusuf Zalal is not that good at getting a takedown. He took him down. Farid Basharat took him down, but Farid's pretty good at that. You know, he was going to be doing that. The big thing here, though, is Blackshear. There's no volume in his game, really, where Lacerda does have decent volume. And again, in this fight, it shows right here, only 27 strikes landed over the course of 3 rounds against Yusuf Zalal. That's a bad scene, guys. That's just a bad scene. So I'm worried about Blackshear's volume. I'm worried about his takedown defense. And I like a steam move. So you know, give me that steam on Luan Lacerda, minus 148. Do I want to bet that? Probably not. I'm going to pass on it completely. Have to take a pass. All right. Last fight of the night. Felipe Lins taking on Maxim Grishin. Lins is a plus 109 underdog. Grishin minus 129 as the favorite. Fight goes. The distance is minus 130. I'm a little surprised. It's like lower than I thought. I thought it would be minus 180, minus something like that. So minus 130 is an interesting. The fight goes the distance prop in general is kind of interesting here. Here's the thing with Felipe Lins. So Maxim Grishin is a striker. He's just okay. There's nothing really special about his game. He's got a little bit of power, not a lot. Takedown defense, not the best. But he's not a grappler. He's a striker. Volume, not the greatest. Okay. So kickboxer, has some power, can't stop a takedown. Now, Felipe Lins, for me, he's a little bit more, he's a little bit more well-rounded of a fighter in general. He does have some takedowns. He's had multiple takedowns in one fight anyway against Marcin Pragnia. So when he needed it, he could use it. But he's also a guy that took an L to Andrei Arlovsky not that long ago. So very low-level guy. He moved down from heavyweight to light heavyweight. He looks much better. He looks ripped at this weight class, but he's just not very good. He got slept by Tanner Boser, and Tanner Boser does not sleep anyone. And he just went to sleep. I fully faded Tanner Boser that fight, and I got my ass handed to me on that DFS card for that fade. So that sucked, right? I fully faded him. So with that being said, I do not trust Felipe Lins' chin at all. He can't be trusted. He can't be trusted. That being said, I like that he's a little bit higher volume, that he has some takedowns here. So I think this fight is pretty close to an avoid outside of the sort of what if Maxim gets a flash KO like Tanner Boser. I'm not going to full fade it, but it's probably a 10%er for me on DraftKings on the Maxim Grishin side. Felipe Lins is 7,400 on DraftKings, super cheap, but we don't need salary savings in this one. I don't think he has much of a path to a finish. He does have a grappling-based decision pathway in front of him, and that could be interesting, but that's about it for Lins. So I'll play maybe a little bit of him for contrarian purposes on DraftKings. I don't think anybody's going to play him between Malarkey and Jim Miller and all those really, really good spots that are just wide open on DraftKings right now for cheap salary relief. I need upside with every other player, and I don't see much upside in Felipe Lins. So he's going to be a fade for me, probably on DraftKings. And I'll mostly fade Maxim Grishin as well on DraftKings. If I had to bet this, I got nothing. No bet. No bet for this one. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the Quick Picks breakdown. I try to keep it quick, talk about some bets, talk about some DFS plays here. Again, Albazi by decision, 1/3 of a unit to win one unit bet. Jim Miller, Santos Frey by decision. Frey fight goes to decision. That is our parlay. Miller, Santos, and the Frey fight goes to decision. We're gonna place a unit on Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov. We're going to place a unit on, or we're going to place 2.5 units on Muin Gaffarov. That is our favorite play. And we're going to risk a unit on Arlovsky plus 125. Listen, if you want my bets, you want my DFS plays, you can always get to Sharp app, or you go to dfsarmy.com. You get signed up, give you our info. And if you would like to get my bets, and just if you like to bet on sports in general, I recommend getting signed up for Sharp app, sharp.app. Go get signed up. Incredible, especially the Proptimizer. It is awesome. You got bets from pros and the best prop projections in the industry by far. These are elite projection models that you can bet every single day using our top props Proptimizer tool on Sharp app. And of course, check out DFS Army. We've got the Domination Station Optimizer to create up to 300 lineups at the push of a button on DraftKings for MMA or anything else that you want to do. I think we have a promo going. Yes, we do. At DFS Army, we've got a promo going. Right, let me kick in the banner. But the promo is promo code SUMMER50 gets you 50% off VIP. So that is our all-inclusive plan, $69.99, 50% off, it's $35, full VIP, Domination Station Optimizer, the Discord, all that good stuff. So make sure you check that out. And I will see you guys next time on another UFC Breakdown.